Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you for the first episode of 2024. I really hope that you had a wonderful entrance into the new year, 2024, that you have and you enjoyed the transition and that you have made some resolutions that you can keep this year, because I'm one of those people too who makes resolutions, and we know what happens to resolutions, right? So for this first episode for the new year, we're going to talk a little bit about us, about how we're doing before we start all the episodes that go into the year further. And we know that this is going to be a seriously eventful year. So sit back, relax, get ready to chat, and I'll be right back. So I'm back, and as I said in my intro, I want to talk to you a little bit tonight, or this episode. I say tonight because I'm recording at night. It's Wednesday, January 3rd. I'm looking at the clock behind my camera. It's about 8:46 p.m. And I want to talk a bit about us and how we're doing, how we start off the year, and sort of taking care of ourselves before we venture into the conversations for the next 51 weeks more, right, of conversations. Many of them will be during times of primaries and debates and unfortunately other negative things in the world. There's wars going on, Israel and the Palestine, the Hamas. There's Russia and Ukraine that seem to ramp up over the last 2 days. I think Russia's boasting about the fact that they attacked Kiev again, and Kiev is saying that they killed many innocent civilians. There are threats of war around the world. Other places, there's American warships shooting pirate boats, dealing with Iranian threats. There's a little possible to be a bigger threat going on in Venezuela, where there's a controversy going on between Guyana and Venezuela over part of the territory that by a treaty from 1899 was agreed upon, was part of Guyana. It's called Essequibo. So there are a lot of things going on around the world. There's a migrant crisis, there's student loans, there's a lot for us to digest, a lot for us to live with, a lot for us to find challenging. Sometimes with these challenges, they're not necessarily personal. You're not experiencing a direct impact, but you're experiencing an indirect impact, right? Because everything around you has this stress level to it, has this worry to it. So let's take it back a notch to where we are right now. We're in the first week of 2024. What we're dealing with immediately that we have to pay attention to is the triple threat rise, okay? So let's start at home in a little bit. You've got the flu, RSV, and COVID. COVID these days is nothing like the COVID I had. I had COVID in March 2020, which was the brutal COVID with no medication for it, right? You had to brave through it and count your blessings if you're one of those who didn't succumb to it and end up in a refrigeration 18-wheeler truck. And so we're finding that more and more states are going back to mask mandates in medical institutions, and it's beginning to spread. On my commute every day back and forth to work, I begin to see more and more people wearing masks again. I have not started wearing one consistently again, but I carry one with me again, whereas I didn't before. And in certain scenarios, like I get up really early in the morning, I take a train very early in the morning. It's not densely populated until it gets to closer to my destination, at which time, for the last three stops, I tend to put a mask on. We still haven't learned the lessons of covering our noses when we sneeze. I see people in public and on the trains doing it openly. So we have the threat of that viral environmental threat around us. But one of the things that is a silent threat that's become a silent killer physically, even externally, is what has become an epidemic of mental health across the United States. And I can't speak for other countries in the world because I'm not sure everybody's experiencing this, this the way we are. I was speaking for someone who works for the MTA, the Metropolitan Transportation, what's it called, Authority. That's the train people who govern the subways in New York. And she was telling me, because she even gets firsthand news more than I get it from 1010 Wins, the amount of incidents in the subways of people pushing strangers onto the subway tracks, sometimes in front of a train, sometimes not in front of a train. People walking up to people in the subways and bashing them in the head, total strangers. We have a mental health crisis, and we're all vulnerable because we cannot tell if the person next to us is about to trigger, is about to act out. We are so caught up in our lives, and this is something I often say to you, my audience, as you listen to my podcast, and I say share and subscribe and spread the word and take time to further the conversation with someone else you know, is because we get so caught up in our world that we don't look beyond our world. We're so caught up in solving the challenges of our world that we sometimes fail to see the opportunities to solve those same challenges by going beyond our cocoons, right? By going beyond our tunnel vision. People go down the subway and they're so deeply internalizing their challenges that they stand there, they don't even realize that they're standing a foot away from the edge of the platform. They don't even realize their surroundings where someone has targeted them that they don't even know, but the person is staring them down. Next thing you know, they're on the track. If they're lucky enough, it's not in front of a train. A lot of times people will wait till the train's coming in the station to push people because the person who's pushing you at that moment is looking to explode emotionally, mentally, whatever. So they're looking for this event. They're looking for something to sort of bounce their triggers, I guess. There are people, I've never seen New York in all the years I've been here, in the 40 years I've been here just about. I've never seen New York with so many hit and run accidents. It used to be a time when I first came to this country and came to New York that hit and run was a rare thing where everybody got shocked and surprised when it happened because generally people would stop. Almost daily there are multiple hit and runs in New York. And whether it be a hit and run where there's property damage, or it's a hit and run where you actually run over and drag a person 50, drag their bodies down the street, people don't stop. We live in a cruel society now where the things that we took for granted are no longer, and the safe spaces we took for granted are no longer safe. So we have to make a difference. We have to decide to step out of our safe, or what we think is our safe spaces. Recognize that united, we create safety for all of us. We create a better environment for all of us. If we stay in our own zone and we fail to find the energy and the time to try to progress something, then it's our own selfishness that can lead to our own demise. Like I said, this episode is about us first, the first episode of the year, because every episode after this is going to start dealing with issues of social issues. I had someone contact me today who was a guest of my show maybe 2 years ago, who does health and fitness and mental fitness. I've had actually two people who are eager to come back on the show as soon as I start having guests again to talk more about this mental health crisis. So we have the COVID issue. We've got the mental health crisis. We've got the issue that threatens our security. I walk to work every morning from my last train stop to my job. It's amazing how I see so many people run the red light. And when I say run the red light, I don't mean speed up and catch it just as it turns red. I'm talking about the light turns red. If it was a busier time and someone was about to cross, they would have been killed because they would be halfway into the road before here comes this car blasting through. Not one time. Sometimes I've seen three cars do it back to back, way after the light turns red. This is significant to me because I think I expressed to many of you that on August 25th of 2023, on that same walk, I was hit by a car. And it was by the grace of God that I was not killed. I had the right of way. People are either in a rush or don't care. And I was a hit and run. I couldn't, in the whole confusion of everything, I can't remember the guy's face, but it was a taxi, an SUV taxi. He actually looked at me dead in the face and just kept going. He slowed for like a slight microsecond, looked at me, and then sped up and took off. Knowing that I'm there, basically holding myself, you could see I was hurt. Didn't matter. So we have to be conscious of when we leave our homes, all the challenges that face us and all the challenges that face our children. As I mentioned to many of you, my wife and I gotta say my wife and I because I agreed, but she is the bold one. She's a fierce one. Our kids have officially started homeschooling. I'm hoping next episode to do a full episode on where they are now and the things that have changed since the last time I talked to you about them, the decision we made to homeschool and how they're progressing. I want to share that with you next episode because we've even started a YouTube channel for them because we recognize that thousands of people every semester, every term, our parents are pulling their children out to school. Yes, it's thousands. It's thousands because we had conversations with the principal of their schools and they're saying, this is going on here in New York, and then we go online and we find this going on across the country. But why is that? As I tried to wrap my head around homeschooling and the pros and cons, I decided to approach it from the benefit. What's the benefit? What are the things that they avoid? We know the things we can teach them. There's online curriculum. There's every single bit of knowledge you can get online. My kids are very disciplined about it. They started doing it. They sit there. My wife has a whole schedule. They actually follow the schedule. My son is writing way better than when he was in school. It's amazing because she brought me this piece of paper and said, look, you believe he wrote this entire story? He's spelling properly. He's sounding his syllabus. He's getting everything right. He's doing math better. This is just within the last month that she was ramping up. Now, one of the things we recognize right away is a child who scored higher on the autism spectrum. When he was working in school, he had to follow the schedule of all the other kids. And so he was never getting to finish what he needed to do properly. He was rushing. Now, if he needs another 10 minutes, he can have it. The other thing that makes it so great, and I have to share this with you, is two things. One, they don't have to wake up at 6:30 in the morning anymore. They wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning. They have breakfast. They start their school at 11. At 2:33, they're done. But here's something amazing that I must share with you. For the last few years, few meaning more than two, probably more like, I don't know, 5, whatever, my son's been on medication. It was the only way that he could focus in school. And the way it worked is they tried different medications. And he would take one in the morning before he'd leave for school. They would send us videos and stuff of my son and he would focus in school. And then around 12:31 when they broke for lunch, we would have to do a separate container with medication. And the nurse would have to give him a second tablet for him to make it through the rest of the day. As parents, we were heartbroken. Heartbroken because number one, the only way we found that he was able to focus was with this medication. We had to give it to him. But number two, when you take that kind of medication, we realized that the effect was much like what people describe as coming down from heroin or cocaine or something. Sometime in the evening around between 5 and 6, he would crash off the medication. Crash meaning he would just start crying and crying and crying. His moods were horrible. He was sulky. He was alone. He would cry incessantly. My wife couldn't stop him. I couldn't stop it. No one. And he just couldn't tell you why he was crying, just crying. Every day when he came home, he'd say, "How was your day at school?" He would say, "I had a bad day." I'm going to look in this lens, and I want to tell all of you who hear this. From the time he started homeschooling, he has not had one tablet, zero medication. This boy gets up on time, has his breakfast, washes up, does brushes his teeth, whatever, goes and sits down in front of his computer. His sister has a computer in a different room. He looks at what the curriculum, his mother said the other day, what classes. He goes to the online class. He does all the math classes, whatever, class by class. Sometimes he gets so into it so much that when it says break, he'll tell my wife, "I don't want to take a break. I want to keep going." If you see the way he writes now, not just what he writes in the content, but how neat it is. He struggled as a child with autism to write. But here's something that's beyond value. I have never seen him this happy in the last 5 or 6 years. My son is happy. He is a joy to be around. No sulking, no crying. He teases his sister. He's a real child who is happy. The damage that medication was doing to his spirit and his soul was painful as parents to see. I'm going to talk about this more when I do the autism episode. I guess I'll repeat this as part of that episode. But my point being that as I start my year, these are things I look forward to. I look forward to having additional episodes, not just about my children, but to help other parents out there who are dealing with these challenges. We have started a YouTube channel with them. I won't share the name of the channel with you yet because we're busy working on design and content. But the whole focus of that channel is for other parents to see how our children grow, to see their daily activities, to feel confident enough if it works for them. It has to work for you, right? Because my wife works from home. So an adult needs to be there. She doesn't supervise them. They sit and are self-supervised. But she has to be there. They can't be home alone. So we understand that everyone may not have the perfect circumstances, but it's something for parents to consider if there is an option. It has also been found that children who do homeschool are almost 2 years ahead of children in regular school, public school, etc. Because they're working specifically on the things they enjoy, the core subjects, and then things they enjoy, and they're doing it at ease, under no stress. There's no bullyism. There's no, "Oh, the school's on lockdown because there's someone with a weapon or a gun." There's no threat of abuse, both physical and emotional. And don't get me wrong, I want you to understand that I gotta wait for the next episode. I don't want to give you all the keys, all the information, but there's a part of this that takes care of their socializing as well, their social lives. But getting back to our challenges, I would get in trouble with a big part of my audience if I didn't mention the pressures of student loans. Now, I heard that the President Biden is coming up with something else that's supposed to wipe out another 50% of what's left, of the 50% that's left, hopefully. He's trying to be coy and work around the objections of the rich and famous in Washington. It's something to do with the Higher Education Act and something that's under the control of the Education Secretary. Something like that. But we have to wait and see. But there's hope. And if we're being humane with each other and not being selfish and pig-headed and feel that there needs to be such a divide between the rich and the poor and oppression, then we should recognize the challenges and the pitfalls of the education system. And the fact that the richest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, should be giving its citizens education for free. And for the private universities, if you choose to go there, you should be held to a standard where when someone graduates, we have a whole society built around the removal of systemic racism, the fairness, and all these things that give you a good shot at living a life where you can still attain the American dream while paying your student loans. I'm looking at a few notes I wrote here. Um, One of the last things I want to prepare you for, as I probably don't have to, is what's coming with elections. We're going to see primaries. I watched a video a couple of days ago of an interview someone had with someone from our society who is a voter. And after hearing what she had to say, we were in trouble. I don't like to use labels and names when I speak about people because it doesn't make it's not right. But I've heard people say that things like President Biden is just a figurehead, that Trump is still the president who's running the country, and all sorts of things. You've got to hear these things, and they believe it. It's scary when human beings have lost. I'm sorry, forgive me, folks. Basic common sense and the ability to think for themselves. When you hear someone give an interview and say these things, me who speaks to you every week, I'm actually lost for words. So we have a challenge coming up here where in November of this year, we have to make a choice for the nation. Whatever your choice is, I don't know who all the candidates will be as yet, but your choice has to be for life, for preservation of life. Your choice has to be to give women ownership over themselves and their bodies. Your choice has to be not supporting racism and prejudice and supremacy of any form. Your choice has to be pushing even harder for the eradication of systemic racism against people of color and gender and life choices. We have got to stop trying to be God and realize that there is a God and we're not that God. Our choice has to be uniting as people to make sure that we put people in Washington on every side of the aisle who are going to do a job for us. I mean, have you guys paid attention to what's going on in Washington? I think the Republicans are about to impeach the head of the Homeland Security. I mean, it's a tit for tat. We got 400-something people in the House of Representatives, and we have 50-something people in the Senate. All they're doing is fighting each other. It's like you go to a prize fight, and the two fighters are in the ring, and they're so intently bent on beating each other up, which is supposed to be the case in boxing or UFC, right? But they're at the point now where they don't care anything about the fans. It's just about the two of them. We have a government that's doing that. All they care about is spiting each other, backbiting each other. They don't care a darn about any of us. Meanwhile, we're dealing with the challenges day in and day out. We can't seem to get any kind of fairness, no matter who we elect. I don't care what side of the aisle you are, Republican or Democrat. On both sides, you have a bunch of self-serving, ignorant people who are aristocrats and who have decided that they're going to be there for their families and themselves for generational wealth, for generational power, and they'll maintain it and own it by any means necessary. We got people in government 40 years. We need term limits. We need fresh blood. We need things to change so that I'm sorry, so that our voices are heard. I feel like my voice is gonna crap out on me, so I'm not gonna kick this too much longer. But welcome to 2024. I hope and pray that you will take this journey every single week with me. Not only for the episodes of listening, supporting this podcast, liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing, please. I want to look at the end of 2024 and see the massive growth of our audience and our activism. I want my mailbox podcast at 247realtalk.net. My email box to be overflowing with ideas and support. I want to come out here and tell you about this effort or that effort that we're making. I want to get to the point where this even podcast is generating enough that I can give it all back to helping kids, abused, whatever we need to do. Look at mental health. We all think that the problems are so big that we can't do anything about it. But we can. And every time one of us or one of our families or close friends or whatever experiences that challenge, we look to someone for help. Let us be that help. Let us provide that help. This will be my 184th episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. I've been preaching change for that long, years. And since I started this YouTube channel, it's well behind the audio podcast. The audio only has thousands upon tens of thousands of downloads and listens, but I don't have it here on YouTube, and I need to because I feel with video, I'm able to connect more with you. You can see my expressions, and you can feel my passion, and you can join me. Like I said, I'm rigging up a lot of gear here to eventually bring guests in, not physically, but when I do bring guests on the program and you can see them on the YouTube, I also want to make sure the quality is what it needs to be so that you can see them clearly and hear them clearly. So there's a lot to come in 2024 that I'm working towards. How much of it I accomplish, I don't know. A lot of it depends on a lot of what happens with us, to us, and around us. But I'm calling upon you as we start this year. Join me. Make a pledge and an agreement within yourselves to renew your efforts. You see me doing it this long, you can certainly do it with me. I thank you always for your support. I cannot do this without you. Whether it's one person listening to my episode or 10,000 people listening to my episode. And by the way, I looked at the statistics the other day, and I'm thankful. I'll do it next time I have the next episode if I remember. But I'm thankful to all of the people who listen to these episodes across the world. It's amazing when you see the breakdown of people who are listening to the podcast in countries I didn't even know existed. And so I thank you all. You all have my undying gratitude from the heart. So as we start 2024, one last thing. Two last things, I'm sorry. One is make sure you go to your doctors and take care of yourselves. In December, I had my blood work. I do blood work 3 times a year. It was pristine. In about 2 weeks, I have a full physical. Full physical. I appeal to men in my age group especially, where the threat of prostate cancer becomes real. It is no shame to go to a doctor and he puts his glove on, he says, bend over, let me check your prostate. Doesn't make you less of a man. It makes sure that you're keeping good tabs on your health and making sure that you're doing your best to be around as a husband, father, son, mentor, whatever you need to be, provider. We have to put those labels and those stereotypes aside and do the right thing for ourselves. As I close out this episode, I want to make sure that we don't forget to take care of our elderly. They were here before us. They paved the way for many of us. They have given us the opportunities we have. And for many cases, they've helped us to get to the level of intelligence and knowledge that we have. My father lives halfway across the world. He has chosen to stay there. And even though he will come and he will spend most of the year with me, when it gets cold, he takes a break. It troubles me when I'm not around him because I need to be there to take care of him. Yesterday, he turned 92 years old. Today, this evening, he had a physical challenge where he fell and couldn't get up. It's it's immediately then that you see the vulnerability of those before us and how much they need our help, how much attention we have to pay. So I'm begging you, don't turn your back on those who paved the way for us. Make sure that as they get older, we make sure that they know their lives are valuable and we do everything we can to make their lives fulfilled and safe. Because one day, if we are blessed to live to their age, like my father's 92, I'm going to need the same help. And I hope that my children have the same love, kindness, and care for me as I do for my parents and my father. Having said that, I thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of 2024. Please take care of yourselves this week. There's this winter in New York if you're here, winter across a lot of parts of the United States where there's bad weather. Watch out for yourselves when you're on the road. Have a little patience for the next person that's driving next to you. Have a little patience with each other as we encounter each other commuting and at work. Have a little patience with your children and your spouses and your family members. And make sure that when we made that promise that 2024 was going to be the best year yet, we do all that we can to make that promise come true. Always my pleasure to be here with you. I wish you a healthy, happy, prosperous, and blessed 2024. And until we speak again on my next episode, please do as I always ask you to. Take care of yourselves. And please take care of each other.